One of the tasks of the worship committee is finding responsible, enlightening ways of producing a worship service when Reverend Larry is out of the pulpit. Ordinarily, this would be accomplished by asking a local UU minister to step in, but that cupboard has been pretty bare lately. Some of the ministers we've counted on are unavailable for an extended period of time, and in some cases permanently. So one thing we're trying is the formation of a Sunday Speakers Bureau. Chris Foster, Sally Rich-Barong, Sally Wood, and Bernie Bojnowski are helping me to initiate this idea. The plan is for 4 or 5 people to speak for 4 or 5 minutes in response to a particular question. There'll be questions like, if you were on trial for being a Unitarian Universalist, would there be enough evidence to convict you? How do you define liberal religion? These are not what we're talking about today. This is just for the future. Tell us about the time when you realized that you wanted to try a religious community, or maybe try a different religious community. What's the thing about this church that really pulls you in? And today, we're going to take kind of a wide-angle view of that and talk about what it is about Unitarian Universalism that really pulls you in. So the order of speakers are going to be Chris, Sally with a Y, Sally with an I, and Bernie. Take it away, Chris.
Hello. I love this stool. Messed it up on there. Okay. The thing about Unitarian Universalism that really pulls me in is an all-inclusive denomination. All races, all genders, atheists, Christians from all kinds of denominations, anyone from any faith history. Gender identification not being ours to embrace, judge, or view as a deity mistake. As opposed to organized religions who follow one book, one version of a book, a doctrine with damning history to humanity, or a belief their versions were meant to be the way, the only way sometimes, to eternity, spiritual enlightenment, wholeness, health, and joy with your existence on this planet, even if it's only this time around. My observation is that UUs focus on not only recognizing all others, but embracing them and serving them too. I am new enough to this denomination not to have taken membership classes or done a deep dive, so to speak, into the history of Unitarian Universalism or this particular congregation's history in practicing the current doctrine yet. I was invited to visit and picked up all the info on the tables, shared them with my son, came again, and we both decided to keep coming. This is the first place we visited that we weren't yawning, looking at each other with raised eyebrows, or mouthing, "We need to leave." How soon can we leave? Let's go. But seriously, that was me, not my son, who basically ignored all my silent entreaties and behaved appropriately in all the places of worship we found ourselves in. I wouldn't say it was a rush to find a home, but more an aching need to heal a wound. find a tribe of like thinkers, breathe deeply and easily during an entire service, as opposed to clenching my hands, finding my head in my hands, shaking my head, or exiting hastily instead of enjoying the coffee crowd after checking the donation basket and wares at the international mission I was involved with. It was tense, sometimes confrontational, and always like an obligation met, as opposed to a spiritual fix fed. This was my own experience, and hopefully not as trying to my son. It was not feeding my soul, but taxing my faith. The people who drew me in were dying or retiring from their roles and activities that were an intellectual enjoyment, a practice in community, or a real joy. The hierarchy of the denomination was exhausted, power-oriented, and international, but oftentimes more liberal than the congregation we were part of. Back to the thing that really pulls me in, inclusivity. And I would like to close with a quote from Jimi Hendrix. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace.
Why? What? You just push it away. You.
I don't know if I wanted or not. Okay,
Yeah, I got it, Sally.
thank you. Thank you very much. My husband, John Michael, and I were talking one day about feeling we lacked a sense of community. He told me that for a long time ago, he was a member of a Unitarian Universalist church in another area. And he began talking about how much he enjoyed the time he spent with the group he belonged to. Sounded appealing. Then he discovered this local congregation. We talked about coming here, looking to find that sense of community, like-minded people, and a sense of belonging. We made an appointment with Reverend Larry for a video call and talked with him about this church, asked him questions, listened carefully to his comments. When we were finished with the call, we looked at each other, nodded. We decided to come take a look and a listen. Not quite sure we were going to make a habit of coming here. Before the first service was over, I felt the beginnings of a sense of community when I looked around at the faces of the congregation. I felt very good about them in general. As time passed and I gradually got to know many of you, I discovered how much I liked you all. Each person represented someone I would gladly invite over for coffee and conversation, try to get to know better. Through a twist of fate, I found myself welcoming people in the lobby. People who were members. People who had been members but had been away for a while. And people who were new to us and would become members of the congregation, hopefully. Without exception, it has been heartwarming to greet them all, to sometimes chat with them for a moment, and best of all, to meet new people, people new to us, who have since joined the congregation. The words during the service that welcome everybody are really sincere and have great meaning to me. There's no search for exclusivity here. Rather, people are inclusive and eager to get to know each other. When I was new to this place, the first time somebody called me by name, thank you, Bernie, I knew I was home. Many of the Unitarian universal qualities, such as generosity, equality, independence, love and compassion, just to mention a few, resonate with me and are clearly evident in this congregation. I'm also amazed by the energy our people have and their willingness to give of themselves in many different ways for the good of the community. Thank you.
Not often I follow another Sally. It's May 2016, and I'm driving down I-90, midway through Massachusetts, returning from a coming-of-age pilgrimage to Boston. I've got 4 adolescent boys in my car, and because we've banned the use of electronics until we get to New Jersey, they're actually talking to each other. I've been deliberately silent, and they've reached that stage where I'm almost invisible. After a brief lull in conversation, to share junk food purchased at the last rest stop, the boy in the middle of the back seat says quietly, and I tear up, and with more than a hint of anguish, I wish this weekend didn't have to end. With you guys, I can be who I really am. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. But tomorrow, I have to go back to school, and it's back to just, well, you know. He was met by an agonizingly long moment of silence, and then the 3 other 14-year-old boys, awkwardly, but with equally courageous vulnerability, reassured him and shared their own feelings of isolation and alienation in their regular lives, and how different the past weekend had been. This and countless other similar experiences teaching our young people has pulled me into Unitarian Universalism over and over again, sometimes against my best efforts to leave. In that exchange, I heard UU principles in action. They were acknowledging each other's inherent worth and dignity, and demonstrating compassion for and acceptance of one another. And at an age when fitting in is a biological imperative, they were celebrating completing a year-long class dedicated to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning along their unique paths to spiritual growth. And while I'm a little less fond of the jet pig values than the old-style principles, I think they were centering love for one another. Now, as an adult, I don't face the same pressures those boys did. Things like having the kids sitting behind you in homeroom every day, whispering that you're going to hell because you're not a Christian. Although the current politics of hate are heading in that direction. But with you guys, I can be who I really am. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not, because you see my inherent worth and dignity. You are compassionate and accept me. And you support me on my sometimes, oftentimes, very convoluted path to spiritual growth as I search for truth and meaning. And that's what pulls me into the UUCLV.
Good morning. This is a religious service, so I'm going to tell you a God story. Seems there was a woman with significant health issues requiring major surgery. And on the operating table, she had a near-death, out-of-body experience. You know, she saw herself in a tunnel rushing towards the light. At the end, she popped out, and there he was, sitting on his throne, the main man, God. God picked up his ledger and said, "What are you doing here? I have you down for another 40 plus years." She said, 40 plus years? He said, yeah. She jumped back in the tunnel, woke up on the operating table. She said, listen, in addition to the initial procedure, I want a facelift, a tummy tuck, liposuction, and breast augmentation. And she had those procedures done. And sometime later, she left the hospital feeling and looking much, much better. Several weeks later, she's crossing the street, whack, she gets hit by a truck, is killed instantly, back in the tunnel, up to the light, she pops out in front of God. She said, 40 plus years, what happened? God said, I didn't recognize you. So on to the matter at hand. Sally contacted us several weeks ago and said, listen, I want you to talk about what pulls you in, what it is about Unitarianism that pulls you in. And to understand that, you have to look at my path to Unitarianism. I was raised a Catholic, strict Catholic family, was an altar boy, went to a Catholic college. But after we were married, Lorraine and I drifted away from the faith. And in the mid-1970s, I found myself working for a small engineering firm in New Haven, Connecticut. My boss, Gene Lewis, was a Jew who married an Irish Catholic girl. So they were both kind of lapsed from their religion. Gene and I were both in a position of thinking about or starting to raise families, and we would have discussions about how do you inculcate some sense of spiritual value in your kids without belonging to an organized religion or organized church. And we never came up with any good answer, and after several years we went our different ways. And a close working relationship turned out to be a close personal friendship, and Gene and I stayed in touch over the years. And one time after supper, I was talking to him on the phone. I said, Gene, what church did you guys wind up going to? He said, church? Why, we go to the Unitarian church. I said, Unitarian church? What's that? He said, oh man, the Unitarians are really neat. They don't believe in nothing. And I was, despite a slightly heretical response, I was intrigued by it because I really wasn't familiar with Unitarians, and so I did some research. And to my surprise and delight, I found that two of their early heroes were Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, two people that I enjoyed reading very much as a undergraduate in college. These guys were really radicals, rebels, way ahead of their time. In fact, Emerson was pushing for a non-dogmatic Christianity. He said religion should be free of oppressive conventions and rituals. We should be relying on covenants, not creeds. And most importantly, he says moral authority comes not from priests or creeds or laws, but from individual conscience and intelligence. And that resonated a lot with me, coming from the strict Catholic upbringing, this freedom to be your own person in terms of defining your theological perspective. So that was kind of the intellectual hook for me for Unitarianism, but there was another side, and that was, I guess, the emotional side. I've been coming here since the mid-'80s, over 40 years. And some of the people in this room today were there when I walked in over 40 years ago. And over that time period, we've worshiped together, we've socialized together, we've debated together. We do what families normally do. And so you've become a part of my extended family. And although we may be, like Jean Lewis said, a family that doesn't believe in nothing when it comes to creeds and laws, we do have a wonderful focus on theological diversity, inclusivity, and a passion for social justice. And that's my story, Tara, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.